In this episode of IT Unplugged, we look at company culture and how we can make it just a little bit more tech savvy.
At M2 Technology, we're on a mission to make IT accessible to everyone. Join us on our journey to demystify the ever-evolving world of business technology. Are you ready to get unplugged?
Welcome back to IT Unplugged. I'm Brandon.
I'm Steven. And
today we're going to talk about culture and culture in the workplace, specifically having a tech savvy culture. You've worked at some places, right, that have probably had a tech savvy culture. What's the place that had the most tech savvy culture that you worked at?
I worked at an algorithmic trading firm, and that was purely tech. Mm-hmm. Everyone who was there, they were super up to date on everything, monitoring and changing anything as they came in. They very much embraced the go fast and break things mentality of, hey, here's something new, let's try it, and then we find out, oh, that was a bad idea, or, hey, that's an awesome idea, let's keep doing it.
So the first off, I love that, right? Like, work fast, break things, see what happens. That old guess and check model, you know. With that being said, I think those people might intrinsically be tech savvy. You're right. Yeah, they're coming in. You're probably not going to have to show them how to log into the computer during their onboarding, right?
Yeah. When you come across someone at a company like that who needs help logging in my experience, they tend to not last. Yeah,
and probably not at a place like that, right?
Exactly.
Well, a lot of the places that we work with or that we talk to, though, they don't automatically bring on those tech-savvy people, right? So you might get lucky. They're probably going to be in charge of IT, if they're not partnered with us.
Yeah.
But why do you think having a tech-savvy culture for any business is kind of crucial?
Well, even if it's not the entire company culture, at least having someone who's keeping up to date on things, the sheer amount of, hey, this is problematic, we need to keep an eye on this, having those multiple eyes is just, it's infinitely valuable. Someone else can poke holes in the system, and that's what you want, because that's how you get them plugged.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing from you is a safety standpoint, right? You should have a tech-savvy culture for safety. Is there any other facets that might be beneficial when it comes to having a tech-savvy business culture?
So it's kind of a double-edged sword, because you can have a very tech-savvy culture where everyone knows how to do things, everyone's got administrative access, they can just kind of install and do things. But then you run that risk of, okay, so random guy just started, he's got full admin rights just like everyone else, but he doesn't know everything about the system. So he might bring in something that will break the systems. That's why you need to have proactive monitoring on the systems themselves, some kind of endpoint protection, some kind of endpoint monitoring. Because if random guy you bring on starts installing sketchy software that, doesn't really fit and he can't justify it, that should be a red flag to someone. And that comes into having that tech-savvy culture of, hey, this guy that we just brought in, he's got full access just like everyone else, but I don't like what he's doing. Can someone pay close attention to him?
Yeah. So it seems like there's that balance, right? You don't want to bring on the person. Well, I'm not saying bring on the person, but you might have more opportunities with the person that's, you need help logging in the morning. But then you have the other, on the other hand, where you might have a little bit of overstepping. So, I want the person that can build a pivot table in Excel, but not necessarily install something on all the computers in the office.
Exactly. Yeah, having that kind of multiple skill set of a person, having someone who can jump in and take a look and say, this guy can do all this crazy stuff in Excel, but he's installing random applications that are, risky.
Yeah.
Having the perspective of that, you need to have that in any culture, and it's just more valuable in a tech-savvy one.
What do you think about efficiency with a tech-savvy culture? Do you think if you build a more tech-savvy culture, you're automatically going to be more efficient? Or, is some of those people that are maybe a little bit more tech-resistant still equally as productive?
One of the most underlooked aspects of a tech-savvy culture, if you bring on someone who's lazy, which that can be looked at as a negative. When someone's tech-savvy, they're more likely to write a program that will automate it for them. You never know what can come out of it. Having that, okay, well, I spend 20 minutes doing this every morning and I hate doing it. Okay, what can I do so I don't have to do that? Can I automate it? That's what you'll run into. A lot of people will find fixes that other people wouldn't think of.
So is that bad or good?
Both.
Okay.
I think it's good. I think it's really valuable having that kind of insight because you never know what kind of processes can be automated. And if someone spends 5 hours a week doing something they don't want to do, and they're tech savvy enough to look into ways of how can I not do this, they can automate the process. That's 5 hours saved that can be put towards doing something valuable instead.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like that hopefully the innovation is bred from not laziness. Hopefully it's bred from like, I want to be more efficient or even out of necessity. You know what I mean? Innovation from necessity is always a great thing.
Yeah, laziness should not be an inspirer for anything, but you never know when it can come in handy.
Yeah, if you don't reinvest that time into something else, probably, not necessarily the case. So
Exactly.
Yeah. So when you come in as an IT consultant, there's a lot of companies that might be tech resistant, meaning like, hey, I heard of this QuickBooks, but we fill out this journal, okay? Let's just say that. How do you what's the first step in lowering that kind of shield of like, I don't want any technology, I don't want any of this stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. Making sure that you can communicate with someone is the most valuable part of it. If someone is, we'll just say, afraid of integrating any kind of technology, they're just completely against it, they don't like the idea of it, sometimes you need to break that barrier of, okay, I'm looking at your systems, I'm looking at what you're doing, and everything you have in place can be made even more efficient. We can double your workload just by, putting a computer here and doing it this way instead.
Now, what you just said might be a reason that people are tech resistant. We can double your workload with your efficiency.
Yep.
So, yeah, if I'm the owner of the company, I'm like, let's go, let's double. We can get double the work done. But if you're Joe, who's been doing some work for the last 15 years a certain way, it's like, hey, Joe, like, I know that you can get done the billing for these 15 people, but now you're going to be able to get done with the billing for 30 people. Like, did he become any less tech resistant?
Well, if you can demonstrate that value of saying, okay, well, we instead of, only being able to work with 15 things at a time, you could do the 30, and he might look at that and say, oh, you're going to up my workload. I don't want to do that. And it's like, no, your workload's going to stay the same, but you're going to be able to touch so much more, so much faster.
Yeah. Is there any way to get tech-resistant employees more excited about IT initiatives? And does that ever fall? It's not, let's be honest, it's not like really your job to get them more excited about it as an IT consultant, because you're probably getting word from above that's like, nope, we will be implementing this thing. Let's say it's multi-factor or something like that. Like, how do you still get end users who you're going to have to work with every day excited about those initiatives?
Yeah. So a couple of shops that I've worked with, just full-on machine shops, very set in their ways. They didn't want to change anything that they had. Sometimes you just have to sit down, you have to talk with them, you have to go through their day with them. A couple of the people, one of them, he insisted on only doing milling on a hand mill. And if you're familiar with the machining process, it's very time consuming. But in this shop, they bought a several tens of thousands of dollars CNC machine that he was supposed to learn and use. And he did not want to because it had a computer on it. He liked his hand milling. So as soon as I talked to him, me and him sat down and we just went over, okay, this is the part that you're making. You're making one at a time, and it's coming out beautifully every time, but you could have this machine making one while you're making one. And him having that perspective of saying, okay, I can do this, the machine's going to do this, and it's getting over a good chunk of the grunt work that he didn't like doing. Yeah. Being able to sit down and talk to him gave him that perspective. And to this day, I believe he's still using the system that me and him worked on.
Yeah. Well, I love that because there's compromise, right? It's not all get on board or, there's no other option, my way or the highway.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a little bit different.
If you walk in anywhere and you say, okay, this is what you're going to do now, especially as an IT consultant, even if you're definitely if you're not a direct IT guy where they've known you for years, you're always just the computer guy. If you're just a random guy that your boss has brought in, you are going to be very resistant to be like, okay, I'm just going to do what this guy says for now. Then once he leaves, throw it all on the shelf.
Yeah.
I've seen that multiple times because as a consultant, you're just a third party.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
most of the time when you're talking to an IT guy, it's for something boring. We can't we can't deny that enough.
I mean, you know, it could be exciting eventually. It's like if you have that buy-in, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So, what is there any commonalities when it comes to the barriers between people? Like, why do you think people might be? Like, I guess this is getting a little psychological, right? Like, why do you think people might be resistant to tech changes?
Well, changes from tradition. I mean, anytime you're knocking out a tradition, something that people are set in their ways on, it's going to make them uncomfortable. If I show up at your house and I say, okay, you've always put your pants on right leg, left leg, and then I start saying, okay, you have to do it left leg, right leg, you're going to be like, what is this? Why am I doing that? That's weird. It's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But it's a slow process of adoption. Sometimes you have to make the point that I guess left leg is faster.
Yeah. I'm like thinking in my head, and I'm wondering which leg do I do right now. So, it's kind of blowing my mind because I don't think I have one. Anyways,
I
didn't think that would be the thing that would blow my mind today. You know what I mean? Which leg you put your pants on with.
See, but if I showed up with a robot that you just have to stand in one spot and it puts your pants on,
Yeah.
you're gonna be like, I don't like this.
Yeah,
This is
yeah.
weird.
Yeah, I can do that myself.
Yeah, exactly.
I also think it might be a little bit of like the identity that people have in their work when it comes to the job that they're doing, right? Like, hey, I've done this job for 10 years. I've done it this way, and I'm a good worker. You know what I mean? Or like, I've done a great job in this. I've never needed the other thing. So I think like it's kind of a sensitive subject for some people because that tech might have a little bit of fear related to it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The gentleman that I referred to before, the one he didn't want to use a CNC machine, that was his exact worry, because he said, okay, this machine, they can just train it, they can pump in the code to generate these parts, and there won't be any human touch. Where's my job? I won't have a job if I learn how to use the machine. But that part doesn't go anywhere. The human aspect has to stay there. Because having the perspective, the human touch that's going to put the eyes on there, the CNC is going to be consistent every time, sure, but it just takes one time of putting a piece of material in and it's slightly crooked or the chuck is loose, that it's going to mismill it. So having someone who can spot these problems, that's not going anywhere. You need to have that.
Yeah.
I don't care what job it is. You can say like, oh, we're going to have robots that are making burgers. That's a rough example. I went to there is one of these in Las Vegas. It's a robot.
Robot restaurant?
Yeah,
Yeah.
robot bartender. That was the worst rum and Coke I've ever had. And it's rum and Coke.
Yeah.
It wasn't good. It didn't mix it right. There was no taste test, anything like that. And again, that's just an off example. Having a person there, they're more trained.
Yes. Yeah. That novelty eventually wears off, and it's like, yeah, let's go back to the thing that works. So it depends. You can overcorrect on some stuff too. Yeah. So is there a success story or example of a company that you think just nailed their tech culture?
Honestly, I would say I don't like giving credit to a lot of the FANG companies. Like, I mean, your Facebooks, your Apples. I think Netflix, as much as I have gripes with Netflix, I think they did a lot of things right. There were multiple companies that spawned out of Netflix. One great example that I love referring to is called Gremlin. They brought in a concept called chaos as a service. It sounds strange, but it helped the development at Netflix just move forward so fast. What Gremlin does, you can schedule a random system to go down. So in production, all of these machines, they can just die at any second.
In production?
In production. But it's intentional because it gets their engineers in the habit of, we have these side-scaling services. If one crashes, we need fault redundancy. We need this to stay up at all times. And a lot of people will look at that and say, okay, we'll just make better code. But they have this, if I remember right, it was called Chaos Monkey, was the original service. But the guys who started it, they would always say, okay, make this code, make this service. We need to have all this fault redundancy. And if it doesn't work, the Chaos Monkey is going to ruin your day. You're going to be at fault if this happens. So when Gremlin, the guys from Netflix, had started, they forked it off of the code that they wrote at the company. And Netflix encouraged that. And I think that is one of the most fantastic things.
Yeah, that's a lot of commitment to if something were going to go wrong. You know what I mean? And how much money you're going to lose or customer, attrition from the whole thing going down. Like, that's commitment.
Yeah, the idea of the equivalent of, say you run a trucking company, and at any point, an engineer is just going to whip a wrench into the spokes of the truck and just knock it out. And if your trucks aren't ready for it, I mean, you're gonna have a very bad day.
Yeah.
The fact that they were so willing to commit to this, that, I mean, it spawned chaos as a service.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Is it like an actual service that other people can use now?
Yeah.
Oh, man, I got to check this out.
Yeah. Okay. Gremlin it's very interesting loading it in. I mean, if I remember right, it's 4 or 5 lines of code that you can just put in, and it's in a boot script on a machine. It just, at any moment, the machine can go down. It's scary, but it's very cool as a developer.
I'll watch you run it on something. Then I'm not going to touch that. But
all right.
all right. One. I think 2 more questions. What's the gripe with Netflix though? What is it? The pricing hike? Is it?
It's a combination of things.
Okay.
Yeah. The media, some of the media that they have, and then it's the pricing hike.
I'm just mad that they kicked me off my mother-in-law's account so long ago. You know what I mean?
Yes.
2 nights ago, I logged into my basement TV and it popped up and it let me watch something, and that I was like tired though, so I shut it off and went back on the next day, and it was gone. And I haven't had it for like 6 months before that. It just randomly like teases me.
Yep.
You can watch an episode before we kick you back off again.
Yep. Getting the call from my mother, like she was on my account for the longest time, and getting that call of, Steven, why is Netflix not working? And I was just like, I'm done with this.
Yeah, I have like the softest spot in my heart for all the companies that did not kick off sharing yet, which is so weird because I know you should pay for it, and you know what I mean. But it's like, Netflix. It's been around forever. Now I can't restart it because it's like $20 a month now. Anyways, we're off on a random tangent.
Oh yeah.
Netflix is not gonna like this episode. Well, but you gave them some credit. So
like I said, they have fantastic company culture, but their consumer culture can be better.
Interesting. Well, that's Netflix is weird in that space too, because their HR deck or whatever that they came out with however many years ago just totally like blew everything up with how their company culture is. We're talking about tech culture, but just company culture in general and the ownership that they put behind it and how transparent it was. Yeah, definitely like a leader in some forward thinking different ways to do things. So
yeah. Well, they're a part of the coalition of FANG companies for a reason.
Yeah. Well, with that being said, one more thing. What's your top tip for fostering ongoing tech learning in a company?
Encourage it. Tell your employees, hey, you read anything cool? You come up with anything? You see any weird programs out there? Well, tell me about them.
Yeah.
That's the best thing you can have. If you have that rapport with your employees, you never know what they'll find.
Yeah, kind of outsourcing it to your employees, or I don't know how you'd say that, but it's like I don't have to find it all and bring it to you. You bring it, and we'll talk about it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I'd say outsourcing would be inward outsourcing, something like that.
Yeah. All right, we're getting off. We got to end this episode, okay? All right. Well, thank you so much for listening to IT Unplugged. Our next episode that we're going to air is actually related all things AI and how to leverage AI for your business. So hopefully you stick around for that one if you find it interesting. Other than that, thanks so much for watching.